here today to talk about Nelly's comments on the shop, and he said,
but you gotta understand, my era of music was the toughest era in hip-hop ever. Ever. When I put out songs, I had to go against DMX,
Eminem,
Jay-Z, Eminem, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, Luda.
Yeah.
All of us are fighting for one spot. So from 99 to like 2008, 10, it's the hardest era ever to get records.
Units, Pimp Juice and us.
and I'm so happy he said this because for the longest, I've always thought the same exact thing. And the 2000s is my favorite era. The late 90s, 2000s of hip hop, hands down the best for me personally. That was my golden age. And I know some people may be like biased because I grew up during that period of time. But the fact still remains, when you go back to that time, it was a hell of an era, man. Like, this was the era of mixtapes before the albums. Like, you had to drop a mixtape or a freestyle to prove yourself as a lyrical MC before the album. You had to give us an appetizer before the feast. I remember the competition was so high that if somebody dropped a dope beat, somebody else the next week or a few days later is gonna drop a freestyle over that beat. And while it could be looked at as that artist appreciating the song, it's also the artist competing with you because you don't want to get outdone on your own joint with a freestyle. So the competition was crazy, you know. When I'm running down the names, people I think of, right, is the top dogs of hip-hop superstars. And one of the things and reasons why I feel like the 2000s was the best era is because this is the era when all of the coasts in different parts of the country started doing their thing. Because for so long, you know, the hip-hop industry was ruled by New York. You know, that's the genesis of it all. So, you know, went from New York and it was just West Coast New York. That was the biggest thing. But when the late 90s hit, on into the 2000s, that's when everybody else came. That was the rise of the South. And we got legends like Lil Wayne, who's God MC, Outkast. You know, Scarface is always doing his thing. We got MJG and 8 Ball, 3 6 Mafia, Trick Daddy and the whole Slip and Slide, Trina. All of these Southern MCs, Texas on the rise, but you know, UGK been around since the 90s, but you know, we saw people like Mike Jones and Paul Wall and Chameleon there also rise. And then we go to the Midwest, like where Nelly is from, you know, giving a face to St. Louis, and with him came the Lunatics, came Chingy, even though they beefed. Then came, you know, Detroit under Eminem with Royce, the Slum Village. All of these different areas were popping at the same exact time, as well as New York and New York and the West Coast, because during that period, Snoop is still dominating. Dre's still out here. The West Side Connection was still around here popping. Game was a new face of the West Coast. And then, you know, the people in New York at the same time, like, it was a lot going on back then, and everybody was competing for that #1 spot, both lyrically and mainstream. And that's one of the bigger things about the 2000s that I feel like made it just harder to compete with, because back then there weren't really that many niche markets. Like, if you was a rapper, you were aiming for commercial success and you were aiming to be successful amongst everybody. Whereas, you know, when we got into the 2010s, it kind of got more niche, and the internet took over. So now artists could blow up having a niche market because people from different walks of life who are into the same thing can support them and they can grow off that. Wasn't like that in the 2000s, you know what I mean? Like, you either competing with the big dogs or you ain't competing at all, you know what I mean? And I just think about all the people he named, everybody who was on there just run. You know, Hov was this is probably when he reached that GOAT tier status in the 2000s. Nas was still out popping at top of his game. That's why him and Nas and that J beef was so crazy. Dipset, D Block, G Unit, Fab, Cassidy, the whole State Property. All of these people from up north, yo, were just in one time going towards the charts. And I think even skill set wise, to me, this was like the best, because again, you had the best from all across the country competing on that scale too. I mean, you look at a song like Made You Look, the remix, and it's quite possible that, you know, a lot of people think Luda took that verse, and rightfully so. I can't deny that. I think Jada took that, but Luda's verse was so phenomenal. You had this creation, especially of the South, of lyrical MCs who could go up the bat with the best of them. You know, T.I. popping, who I would consider lyrical from the South. Jeezy, again, Wayne. You know, 3 Stacks really separated himself from everybody. Like, all of these different MCs at one time just collectively came and smacked the game up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was something different. So I actually agree with Nelly. And if you take your bias away and look at the skill set, even from the chart standpoint, like when you talk about hits, this was back then when, as an MC, you were making specific records to chart. You know, you had your club record, you had your record for the ladies, you had your street records, and you would have multiple of each, as well as whatever you wanted to do in there. But it was just a different game back then. You know, back when artist development was a thing, back when you had to check certain boxes to be an artist. It was a different time, man. And it's something that I don't believe the artists now have to deal with. And I think before the late 90s and early 2000s, these artists didn't have to deal with it either, because I feel like it was mainly in New York, and of course the competition in New York is crazy. I already know. Not down in that at all. Same with the West Coast. I know the competition in the West Coast was crazy, and you know, not down in that at all. But when you have to compete with the people in your hometown and in your city and in your state like that, and all of these other folks, you got to compete with the Midwest, the South. It's a whole plethora of talented MCs, both lyrically and both hits. Because again, one thing that I'm overlooking with the South is the crunk era, and just how the reign of the South was so heavy to the point where it's still going. On whatever music app you use, right, just do a simple thing, and this is kind of why I know about it so much. Just go to 2000s hip-hop hits, and the amount of shit that pops up is gonna blow your mind for those who kind of look at Nelly like, what is he doing? He's 100% right, though. 100% right. So I just wanted to give my little 2 cents. It really wasn't much of any 2 cents, really, because he kind of said it himself, but just how it made me feel back then. Because the 2000s is what made me want to be a rapper back then. I was like, holy shit, this is like major being a hip-hop artist in the 2000s because of all the things you could do. This is back when artists actually felt, sounded, and looked like artists with everything they did. You could tell when you saw them, it was marketed, it was polished, and it was to sell to us, and shit was just bigger than life back then. I really, really missed that era, and I missed the effort and from everything. Because even off of the mainstream level, even the people who were on the mixtape circuit were crazy. Like, I think about Desert Storm. You know, if you don't know who that is, look them up. That's the people that Joe Budden came from, and Fab was doing tapes with them. What's my man named Paul Kane and Stack Bundles and all of that. Like, Lloyd Banks killing the mixtape circuit, D-Block killing the mixtape circuit, you know, doing mixtapes with Green Lantern, the come up of Gangsta Grills with Big DJ Drama running around with Jeezy and T.I. and Wayne with his No Ceiling mixtapes just killing everything. Who, this was the era when he took off like a rocket to show people, I can rap. I'm the best. And nobody refuted it. That's the crazy part. Clips first came out with the Re-Up Gang tapes. Like, the shit was crazy back then on all levels. Whether you want the lyrical shit or the hit stuff, man, it covered all grounds, and that's my favorite era. And I'm so happy that Nelly came out and said that, man. So those are my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree? And if not, what era do you think was more difficult as an artist competing on a mainstream level and, you know, talent level? So, you know, I am the rap nerd, so I had to say something about it. So if you like this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe. If you already are subscribed, appreciate it as usual. And until next time, peace. RapNerd Productions, no capping, that's word to mommy.